Hey guys, welcome back to the channel Dzkan Toys, where I do reviews and share my thoughts on some of my favorite toy releases. Today we'll be looking at a new Figma release, which is the Figma 456 San from the Heavily Armed series. So let's get the unboxing started. Alright, here we have our Figma San unboxed. While we take a quick 360 view, let's talk about the background information of the toy company as well as the character. In regards to the company, the Figma series is a Japanese action figure line produced by Max Factory and distributed by Good Smile Company. The product series is developed by the CEO of Max Factory, Max Watanabe, as well as Masaki Aspie. They focus on creating highly articulated hand-sized figures, with a focus usually on anime characters. In regarding to our character San today, she's from the Figma line known as Heavily Armed High School Girls. All of the characters inside this line base its design philosophies on heavily stylized high school girls with weaponry and futuristic technology. In addition, all of the cool designs for the Heavily Armed High School series are courtesy of the artist known as Nico. If you're interested in Nico's work, you can find more of the illustrations of Nico on Twitter. In fact, I believe even next year, Figma and Max Factory will be doing another collab with Nico, and they will be producing a new Figma figure based on the false lander illustration that Nico the artist did as well. Now let's move on to the aesthetics and paint job of the figure. First, I have to say the overall aesthetics of Figma San for me looks extremely good. In regards to the design, I feel like Nico's original illustration jumped right off the illustration page and into reality in Figma form. When looking at the upper body, starting with the head, we have a very prominent piece of mechanical design on the eyes attached to the head. It seems to be some type of futuristic mechanical enhancement here we have on the headpiece. Also, the eyes are done perfectly in terms of Figma fashion. Figma usually does a terrific job on all of their anime-like eye designs, and over here for Figma San is no different. It is printed perfectly and very crisp. In terms of the upper body aesthetics, we have a high school uniform sculpted nicely over here. There's definitely a layered feeling in terms of the sculpt work, as we can see the outside blazers extending inside to the dress shirt as well. For the color separation done on this figure, I have to say is very nice. We have so many bright colors and unique colors that really pop. Personally, first looking at the upper body, what really pops is the red ribbon on the necktie collar. Also, for this version of Figma San, we have a unique bright baby blue color that extends all over the body design language. In terms of the head, we have the baby blue on the headband. The shoulders, we have lines that extends outwards, which are painted in a baby blue. In terms of the lower body, we can see that her stockings or some sort of inner leggings is done in this nice baby blue color as well. Just on a side note, I have noticed that since the first release of the Heavily Armed High School Girl Ichi Figma done in this line, there seems to be a unique bright colored highlight design theme in terms of the characters, and each Figma in this line is done in a different color. So for the first one, Ichi, it was in this light pinkish color highlighted in terms of the design. The second one, I believe it was a red color. The third Figma was a yellow color. Yeah, that's right. For the arrow shooting girl, I think her name was Roku, but correct me if I'm wrong. I need to double check. And over here for the fourth one in this line, which is our San Figma in front of us, is done in this baby blue color in terms of the highlight. So a pretty colorful design for all of these characters for their highlighting colors. Other colors can also be seen highlighting the design of the figure. They include white, of course, the dress shirt within her, blazer on the sleeves in terms of the lines. We also have this light brown color on the top of the blazer jacket, which extends to the inner dress shirt. We also have the lighter brown colors at the bottom of the sleeves as well as under the belt. Moving to the lower bodies, we have these futuristic looking exosuit legs attached to the figure. So this design aspect is actually shared among all of the Figmas and the character designs under the Heavily Armed series line. What I imagine these to do is basically boost the mobility of the characters, but then again, that's just my imagination. So it's really up to you guys. It's just an original design feature that's shared among all of the Figmas under this line. And over here for San, she also have these exosuit looking boots. As for the paintwork and colors of the lower body, we have this black for the exosuit boots primarily, but it's highlighted in several colors. At the knee guards, we have the white used on the stripes. At the other parts, such as the knees and also the back of the heels, we have this sort of bronze gold color. Finally, we also have this dark blue color used as a highlight in terms of a stripe behind the heels and in front of the heels. So the blue color idea used throughout the figure seems to be one of the design features. Not only do we have light blue, but we also have dark blue. Here's a quick view of the back of the exo boots, and indeed they look extremely stylized. Now let's move on to the articulation of this Figma. For the head, we have a 360, looking down, looking up, arms sideways, not a full 360 rotation due to the design of the collar here. Although this material is in rubber, which means we can sort of work with it and let it bend a little bit depending on the pose. Here we have our elbow bend, wrist 360 rotation side to side depending on the angle. For the midsection, we have a rotation at the ab joint. We do have an ab crunch that goes forwards and backwards. For the lower waist, we have a 360, also forward and backwards. So that's pretty good. In regarding to the legs, we can kick all the way up. The design of the skirt material is in rubber, which means it helps with the articulation. Backwards, knee bend. So knee bend is not a full knee bend. We can only go this far, but then again, this is due to the design of the exo boots. We also have a rotation at the thighs due to the ball joint. Moving down, the ankle, we have a rotation, forward, backwards, and for the feet, we have a slight pivot, but I don't think this does much. All in all then, for the articulation of this Figma, I would say it's pretty good. It's what we would expect from the Figma line. In terms of a design like this, I'm pretty satisfied. Now, on the side note, we can see here I posed this figure and let her stand without her stand. It's kind of hard to balance because of the design of the exo boots. Just like all of the other Figmas under this line, we can see that the surface area of the feet is extremely small, but it is possible to balance her and let her stand without a stand. But for the majority of the part, I believe all of us are going to be using the stand because if I push the table a bit, she'll fall over. Alright, moving on to the accessories. In regarding to the face plates, we have 2 extra face plates and also an extra hairpiece for the head sculpt. Now the one that we see in front of us is the one straight out of the box. This one is her normal face. Here I have just attached the second faceplate, which is basically very similar to the first one, except for this one, she is slightly smiling. Now before I switch to the third one, I want to change the hairpiece for you guys to look at first, because for the third one, we actually have an eyepiece on the other side. Let me just show you guys and you'll know what I'm talking about. Okay, so here is what she looks like with her alternative headpiece or hairpiece. The difference between this one and the one attached to it previously is that she took off the mechanicalized part on the head, the one that's covering her eye before. Now we get to see both of her eyes. Once we swap out the hairpiece, another design in terms of the face feature becomes very obvious. And I would like to point that out to you guys, which is that Figma San over here actually have 2 eye colors. Different eye color for each individual eye. The one that's usually not being covered up is in this light red color, but on the other side, the one that is usually being covered up is in this gray color, sort of a light cool gray color. So that's very unique in terms of the design of the face and the eyes. Here we have her third face sculpt. This face sculpt looks more curious in terms of the expression, and the obvious design feature for this one is the white eye patch that's covering the gray colored eye. So instead of the normal hairpiece with the mechanical futuristic looking piece covering the eye, over here we just have a normal eye patch. Of course, all of the faceplates can be used with our first hairpiece as well, the one with the armor covering the eyes. So over here, I actually have the eye patch faceplate, but it can be used with our first hairpiece. This design is actually pretty cool too, because not only is her eye being covered by the futuristic looking armor piece, but we can also see some lines of the eye patch that extends outwards toward the rest of the face. Moving on to the other accessories, which is her weapon. So this line is called heavily armed for a reason, and over here we can definitely see that the weapon is very cool and exaggerated. We have this really futuristic looking item over here. At first glance, maybe one would not even know what this is, but it's actually a case to carry her weapons, which is 2 axes. We also have 2 separate axes included in the kit as well. These look slightly taller than the ones that's being stored inside the case right now. Let's first take a look at this piece over here. So after looking at it, we can actually separate these 2 pieces. I assume normally for storage, she would hold over here at the handle, but we can actually pull this piece out and slightly open. It's a little bit hard to do on camera, but we can open this here like that. And after we open it, this part becomes loose and we can actually slide it out, and then we can pull the axe out, so it looks something like that. So this is just a storage case for these axe weapon, and we can click it back in. For this one, we also can do the similar steps, which is pull this axe out like that and put it back in. So this middle piece is basically a clip that we can clip the 2 pieces together, so we can separate them if you want. So there's a lot of playability here. As for the axe that we took out from the case, comparing them to the extra ones that we got in this kit, they look basically the same. The only difference is the one that we have on the side is a bit longer. Oh, actually I noticed another difference. The longer one also have a deco over here. So what does it say? Some sort of numbering and letter, HAHGSO3. So it probably stands something for her name. San means 3 in Japanese, I believe, so something like that. So the only difference is slightly longer and the deco over here for the non-storage ones. I wonder if you can store the longer ones inside. Maybe I'll try that for you guys too. So let me pause the camera. Alright, so here's the result of the longer one inside. So we technically can't fully close the case as there's a part protruding here. So I just put the whole thing back together again. I do really enjoy this weaponry. It's really unique. And for the recent release in terms of Figmas, we never really got a weapon like this. It really reminds me of something from Black Rock Shooter years ago. Although I didn't watch that anime, but it was really popular back then. I know there was somebody who used similar axe-like weapon. As for the color separation, it's also really done perfectly. All of the colors are nicely painted, including the metallic bronze gold and the blue color, as well as hints of silver and white. Even here at the openings, we have these blue spots, and when I open it, we have these bronze gold spots. So this make it look more realistic in terms of having a lock on the case. Yeah, so I really enjoyed this weapon. For the other accessories, we have the typical Figma stand over here, the typical Figma storage bag for storing your parts. We also have the extra wrist peg included with all of the Figma releases in case you lose a wrist peg or break one. For the exchangeable hands, we actually have 4 sets of extra ones, 2 closed fists, 2 holding hands, another 2 holding hands, so we have 4 holding hands. They look really similar to me with a little bit of slight difference, so I'm not sure why we have so many holding hands, but maybe it's for different angles. And lastly, the 2 on the bottom are 2 open palms that's slightly in a gripping position. Of course, the ones that we have on the Figma itself is 2 fully open palms. So we do have a lot of hand option for our Figma as usual. After playing around with the hand accessories a bit more, I found out that the pair of holding hands that's slightly wider is better for holding the handles of the weaponry when it's stored away. And when holding the actual axe, I assume that it's better that we use the tighter holding hands included. So that's why we have 2 sets of holding hands. although they look very similar. Alright, now time for some size comparisons. First, we have other Figmas, which are actually from the same line, known as the Heavily Armed series of high school girls. So the comparison here looks very nice together. We finally have the squad united. We have Ichi on the left, Roku on the right, Shi in the back, and of course, at the center, the star of today's review, which is San. They look like they belong together. Now time for some size comparisons. First, we have other Figmas, which are actually from the same line, known as the Heavily Armed series of high school girls. So the comparison here looks very nice together. We finally have the squad united. We have Ichi on the left, Roku on the right, Shi in the back, and of course, at the center, the star of today's review, which is San. They look like they belong together. Here we have another size comparison. We have a Figma Little Armory on the left and a Mafex John Wick on the right. So over here, San is actually quite tall. She's much taller than the normal Figma compared to the Little Armory Figma on the left. And in fact, she's actually around the same height as John Wick over here in the Mafex line. This is most likely due to the design of her exo boots over here, which brings up her overall height by a lot. Oh yeah, and earlier I forgot to show you guys, we have this extra piece of artwork included in the box. So all of the heavily armed Figmas included this art card, and San here is no different. We have this beautiful artwork in the front of this card, and at the back we have some more images and some information about her, I guess. So pretty cool. Some more size comparisons. Here is a Mezco cable, 112. Also SH Figuarts Kaioken Goku. So looking at the picture over here, it looks like she's actually taller than Goku too. So pretty surprising. Here we have a final size comparison compared to a Storm Collectibles Bane, which is a huge figure. And it looks like San over here in the Figma form goes up around his waist. Alright, final thoughts on the Figma 456 San. Overall, I have to say it is an excellent release in the Figma line. It's probably one of my favorite recent Figma releases. In terms of the design and aesthetics, Figma and Max Factory did such a good job in recreating Nico's art in real life in Figma form. If you're a fan of Nico's art and the illustration that Nico does, this Figma is definitely for you. In addition, the paintwork is also nicely done on the Figma and also the weaponry. There's so many nice color separation in terms of the design and paintwork. Even looking closely at the figure this time, I have to say Figma did a good job on the quality control. A lot of the lines seems pretty clean to me. Even looking closely, there's hardly any type of paint defects. So good job on that, Max Factory. As you guys can tell then, I'm a huge fan of this Figma San release. If you guys like heavy weaponry, futuristic design, and extremely stylish outfits, then this release is definitely for you. Anyways, there goes the end of my review. Please remember to support the channel by liking the video and subscribing. I would really appreciate that. As always, my friends, stay young at heart. Until next time, we're out.